All right, so in geometry class, we really kind of have to start with some like basic building blocks and we'll kind of build onto each other. So the first thing we have to talk about is what will make a good definition in geometry class. So they need to be accurate. They obviously need to contain accurate information, understandable. Make sure that you're, using stuff that you've previously defined, things that you know the meaning of, and such. Reversible means that if you like say it kind of backwards, it still applies. Um, so the example that we like to give typically is like a spoon is a utensil for like stirring and eating. But if we said a utensil for stirring and eating is a spoon, but that could also be a fork, right? So we need to make sure that you can like say it both ways. It's like descriptive enough that you know what that means. Concise, just don't make it too wordy. Um, Objective, make sure that you're not using any kind of exaggerations or anything in your definition. All right, so then in order to start defining some of these words, we have to go over what we call the 3 undefined terms in geometry. So these are like our basic building blocks for everything we'll learn this year, and what allows us to start forming good definitions and theorems and postulates and things like that. So the first one is a point. So a point is a dot or a location in space. It technically has no length, width, or thickness. So it's just representing a singular location. When we draw points, they're drawn as just a dot and they are labeled with this capital letter. So this is called point P, right? Because it's a point, it's labeled with this capital P. Next, we have a line, which is a straight set of points extending infinitely in one dimension with no width or thickness. Right, so no width or thickness, it's just one dimensional. So a line typically is drawn out just like this. It's a straight line, 2 arrows, can have 2 points. So you can use those points to name the line. So you can call it CD, again, name with the capital letters. So line CD, so you do a C and a D, and then you just draw a tiny little line over it. The order doesn't matter for a line, so you could also call this line DC. Even if there was a third point on that line, you could use any 2 of those points to name that same line. The other way you can see lines drawn and named is sometimes you just have the line and it has a lowercase or like italicized letter over to one side. You can just call that line M. For that one, you have to like actually write out line and then M to name it properly. All right, so a plane is a flat surface made of points extending infinitely in 2 dimensions with no thickness. I did. Well, I did for science. I didn't for. Thank you. All right, so the best way to kind of visualize a plane is sort of like a sheet of paper, right? It doesn't technically have width, but you've got length and thickness. So it's a 2-dimensional surface that your points and lines can like be on. So they're just in that one like straight plane, okay? So the way we draw that is kind of just, I'm gonna go ahead and throw a text. It's kind of like a parallel, just some kind of like 4-sided shape there. It doesn't have to be perfect, just something that that's what we use to represent a plane. And just like the line, sometimes the planes will have a lowercase letter in one of the corners. So let's say this is like plane K. And other times it will have at least 3 points on it. So like actual points with capital letters. So the other way you could name this is plane F, G, H. And again, the order of those points doesn't matter. You can call it whatever. Just you have to use at least 3 points to name that plane though. Okay. So, any questions about points, lines, or planes? You feel okay about that?
All right. So now that we have those undefined terms, we can go on to start defining some other things that we will use in geometry. Like I said, guys, I'm sorry, there's just a whole lot of definitions today. It's not very fun, but it'll be all right. So the first one we have is collinear points. Anybody have a guess on what that means?
Points that lie on the same line.
Yes.
Points that do not lie on the same line.
Right, so you read it from the book. Right, but co means that they're together, right? Linear means on a line, so they're together on one line. Right, so let's say I have a line here. So point A, point B, they're both on that line, so they would be considered collinear points because they're on the same line. That's all it means. And so as MJ already read, the second part of that definition in the book tells you about non-collinear points. So let's go ahead and define that one as well. Which is points not on the same line. So that would be, let's say I have my nice little red line here again. I have A, but then let's say I have another point over here, C. Right, those are not on the same line. So those would be non-collinear points. Is the table squeaking? Yes. This is going to sound weird, but kick the leg of the table. Like, kick it out. Yeah. Do the same thing on the other side. Is it squeaking now? No. Okay. So. All right. So, how are we feeling about collinear and non-collinear points? Good? Anybody still writing? Are we good? Can I go on to the next slide? Okay. All right, so we have concurrent lines. Oh, I guess I should have gone back. That's okay. So these are lines whose intersection is a single point. Right, so basically concurrent lines is just another word for intersecting lines. Right, so I'm going to just kind of put a note there. Right, so that means if we have two lines, right, they're going to like intersect each other, but it just means that their intersection is just one singular point. Right. And as we'll learn here later, lines can only intersect at one point. So, we're never ready for more geometry, but there's always going to be more coming. So, not always. It does eventually end, but then the next day there's some more. So, okay. So, we next have coplanar points. Any guesses on that one now that you guys know what collinear points are?
So are those two planes that join?
Not quite.
Point?
Nope, that would be, no, we'll get to that in a little bit. Yeah.
2 points in the same plane.
Yeah, so it's going to be 2 points on the same plane. They're coplanar, so they like coexist on one plane. All right, so they really like to throw you guys off with this one. So before we had like collinear points, non-collinear points. So you would think that you would have coplanar points and non-coplanar points, but no, they give those a different name. Next is I got ahead of myself. We have coplanar lines, which are going to be lines on the same plane. What is up with that A? Oh, man. All right, and so then, again, we don't have non-coplanar lines. Those are called skew lines. This is the definition that messes most people up when it comes test time, because you want to call them non-coplanar lines, but they're not. So these are lines that are not on the same plane. Right, so skew lines is the opposite of coplanar lines, okay? Intersect, that is parallel lines. So they're lines that are in the same plane, they'll go beside each other, like Ike said, but they will never be able to intersect. Right, the symbol for parallel lines, so let's say we have like line AB, and then line like CD. Right, so if we were to say those two were parallel, we would put, it really just looks like two parallel lines in between them. Right, so when you see that symbol, that means parallel. Okay, and then any guess what parallel planes are?
Planes that never touch.
Yep, so planes that never intersect.